Somehow it's September already, and that means it's Shaketember, a booktube event dedicated to the works of William Shakespeare. It's hosted by Kelly from Books I'm Not Reading, Jason from Old Blues Chapter and Verse, and Nicole from A Day of Small Things. And I'll put links in the description to all of their introductory videos so you can see what Shakespeare plays and other related things they'll be talking about in their videos this month. But if you find Shakespeare daunting, I thought I would share some tips on how to get into his work and how to get the most out of it. I'll discuss how to understand and interpret his work, whether it's better to read or watch the plays first, and a little bit about how his verse writing works. I'm not a scholar, I'm just a passionate fan, and these are some things that I've learned in my last 10 years of Shakespeare fandom. If you want more in-depth and authoritative explanations of the concepts that I'm going to discuss in this video, my two main sources are This is Shakespeare, a book by Emma Smith, and Playing Shakespeare, an acting workshop series led by John Barton, the co-founder of the RSC. Aside from interacting directly with Shakespeare's plays as a reader, an audience member, and very occasional amateur actor, these two sources have done the most, I think, to shape my understanding and appreciation of Shakespeare. So when I'm reading or watching Shakespeare, here are a few things I find useful to Imaginary Panda. Bear in mind. Gappiness. Reading Shakespeare can sometimes feel a little bit like being a detective. This is because of what Emma Smith describes as gappiness, Shakespeare's tendency to leave a lot of room for interpretation. For starters, this is simply because it's a play. The book of Hamlet is no more the play than the sheet music for Beethoven's Fifth is the symphony. They are instructions for the performers on how to put on a performance of that work. So when we read a play, we imagine it performed, but there's a lot about that imaginary performance that Shakespeare doesn't really tell us. When you read a modern play, it's likely to come with pretty detailed descriptions of things like the sets and costumes and lighting, sound effects, and even where on the stage the actors should stand. But Shakespeare gives us very little of this detail. Apart from telling us who's in each scene, there's precious few stage directions, and it pretty much mostly boils down to the very, very basics. You know, they kiss, they fight, he dies, that sort of thing. So most of the time, we have to pick up the finer details from context clues. If one character tells another to stand up, then we can deduce from that that they had been, sitting down or kneeling or whatever. So reading a Shakespeare play for the first time is basically a constant process of picking up on these clues and putting it together into our mental image of the play. But when you watch a play, the cast and crew have done most of this detective work for you. That's why watching a play can be the best introduction to it. You could watch it to get the general idea of it all, and then read it afterwards to study the lines in more detail. But whichever way round you do it, whether you watch it first and then read it, or vice versa, I definitely recommend doing both to get the most out of a play. But Emma Smith's concept of gappiness doesn't just apply to the stage directions. It's also about the bigger picture, the meanings of the play. Shakespeare rarely dictates what we should think about a character or a situation. Instead, he presents us with multiple sides of an argument, and then it's our job to figure out how we feel about it. And this thematic gappiness is why, in performance, the same play can be presented with multiple radically different interpretations. I mean, I've seen multiple different versions of The Merchant of Venice, for example, and some of them I loved and some of them I hated. It was the same play, the same text, but performed in different ways that made me feel very differently about that play. Such gappiness, then, is part of what has kept Shakespeare's work alive and relevant for centuries. It refuses to be pinned down. Like Schrodinger's cat, a play's meaning is only decided when the curtains open and we observe it for ourselves. Footnotes. Shakespeare's work, being over 400 years old, is of course in the public domain, so you can easily get free ebooks from Project Gutenberg or wherever else you want to look. And that's obviously fantastic, but being 400 years old, reading it without any context or guidance can be challenging for modern readers. So I would recommend getting hold of a book with editorial footnotes. I particularly like these RSC editions, edited by Jonathan Bate and Eric Rasmussen. This is the copy of Measure for Measure that I read just recently. But, your mileage may vary. So I would suggest comparing different editions in a bookshop or a library if you can, and then deciding which looks most readable and informative to you. In fact, Nicole from A Day of Small Things has a whole video all about that process, so I'll put a link in the description to that. Footnotes can be really helpful for making sense of Shakespeare. I mean, I'm no expert on the Bible or ancient Greek and Roman mythology, so some of Shakespeare's references and allusions would go over my head. So it's really helpful to have those footnotes on hand. They can also help to parse a particularly long or confusing sentence, and they can provide important historical context and other such enlightening details. Of course, while it is quicker than putting down the book and picking up your phone, stopping to check the footnotes will slow down your reading. A Shakespeare play will take you much longer to read than it would to watch, so it's up to you to decide whether you'd prefer to watch it first to get the gist of it and then read it later to fill in all the fine details, or perhaps you'd rather read it first so that you can better understand the arcane language before you hear it performed. Either way has its benefits. Personally, I used to swear by watching them first, but more recently I've actually really enjoyed reading plays that I haven't seen yet, including Measure for Measure. In the rest of this video, I'll be talking about some pretty specific aspects of Shakespeare's writing. So if you're kind of already daunted by his work, you might want to stop the video here. But anyway, these are some of the complexities that actors and readers alike would do well to keep in mind when approaching Shakespeare's plays. Firstly, Elizabethan English had formal and informal terms of address. Many languages still have this today, Sie and Du in German, for example. But it's something that modern English lacks. We just call everyone you. And it's natural for modern readers to assume that thee, being an arcane term that sounds more fancy, must therefore be the more formal address. But it's actually the other way around. You is the formal and respectful form of address, while thee is more intimate. Keeping that one fact in mind can unlock a much deeper understanding of Shakespeare and his contemporaries. Pay attention to when characters say you or thee. Notice when a relationship changes from one to the other. It's the equivalent of switching from Mr. Shakespeare to Bill, and it will tell you a lot about the relationships between characters. Verse. To understand the meaning of his words, it helps to know the rhythm of his verse. This is a rhyming couplet in iambic pentameter. Put simply, that is the rhythm of most of Shakespeare's poetry. His plays tend to switch between passages of regular prose and passages of verse, not always rhymed like a sonnet, but with that underlying rhythm, which is known technically as iambic pentameter. So what does that mean, and how does it work? Well, an iamb is a metrical foot or unit. It's a pair of syllables with the stress or emphasis on the second. The word because is an iamb, for example. Because. And pentameter just means that there are 5 of these metrical feet in a line, like 5 beats in a bar. Because. Because of the wonderful things he does. But of course, it's not as simple as that. A play would get pretty monotonous if it just stuck to that constant sing-song iambic rhythm. Shakespeare frequently breaks the rhythm. Where he chooses to break it and draw our attention can tell us a lot. Take, for example, the famous opening line of Romeo and Juliet. 2 households, both alike in dignity. I mean, sure, there are 10 syllables, but it would feel just wrong to read that line in strict iambic pentameter. Listen. 2 households, both alike in dignity. It doesn't work. So we have to stress that first syllable as well. It's 2 households, both alike in dignity. And this breaks that lilting pattern of iambic pentameter, and by breaking the pattern, it puts an even greater emphasis on the word to. It draws our ear to it. Shakespeare is emphasizing to us those 2 households are going to be vital in the play. Training your eye and your ear to follow the underlying rhythm of Shakespeare's verse, and more importantly, to notice when he deviates from that rhythm, can unlock a greater understanding of his words. He is subtly guiding us, almost working as a director, using only the power of poetry. If you want more detailed demonstrations of Shakespeare's verse and all its intricacies, I highly recommend John Barton's Playing Shakespeare workshops. I have it on DVD, but I believe you can find the whole series on YouTube. The series was made in the 1980s and features such acting legends as Ian McKellen, Judi Dench, Patrick Stewart, Ben Kingsley, David Suchet, and more. It's also a great demonstration of Emma Smith's concept of gappiness, especially an episode dedicated to The Merchant of Venice. Patrick Stewart and David Suchet had both played Shylock in productions directed by John Barton, and in this episode, they take turns, back to back, performing as Shylock the exact same scenes, based on the exact same directions from John Barton. And you can see how vastly different their 2 interpretations of the role are. It's based entirely on their own perspectives as actors and human beings. It's gappiness in action. So, whether you're a complete novice, or maybe you just needed a quick refresher on your these and thous, or maybe you're just humouring me while I info dump about one of my special interests, I hope this video was in some way helpful to you. If you're a fellow Shakespeare fan, then I'd love to hear from you in the comments, so maybe let me know what was the first Shakespeare play you saw or read, whether you prefer to see or read them, and maybe who's your favourite Shakespearean actor. My answers would be the primary school production of As You Like It, where I played the evil Duke Frederick. I like reading and watching them both, but right now I kind of favour reading them because I'm kind of in the mood for peace and quiet at the moment. And my favourite Shakespearean actor is probably David Tennant. Anyway, that's about it from me today. I hope thou art having a lovely day, and I will see thee when I see thee.